my name is Tunde Onakoya. I'm a National Master of Chess in Nigeria, and I'm the convener of Chess in Slums, Africa. When I was still playing actively, I was ranked number 13 in Nigeria. So I have an active FIDE rating, and I've competed in a couple of tournaments.
Champion! Champion, don't forget.
Chess for me was love at first sight, and this was at some point after my basic education. So there was a time I had a gap here where I couldn't go to school, and so I was always at home. So there was this barbering salon just on the other side of our street where I grew up, and it was more of a slum community. So I would always go there to play video games. On one of those days, he just brought out a small plastic chessboard, and I was fascinated by the way the pieces were carved. So I wanted to know what that game was, and he would say, "Oh, it's chess," but he wouldn't teach me how to play them because he thought I was too young. But I would always watch he and his friends play. Eventually, I just picked up, the way the pieces moved, and when I got back to school, secondary school, So we had an active chess club in our school, so I joined, and that was the first real exposure I got outside where I grew up. Would go out and compete for tournaments, and that was how I found the gift of chess. Yeah. I play the piano. I used to play the piano professionally, and before I started this project, I had a very strong music background from church. And I'm also a graduate of computer science, in Yaba Tech. I do a bit of graphics. A lot of those came in handy at the, beginning of the project when I still needed to leverage on certain things to, keep body and soul together. But majorly, full-time, I'm a professional chess coach. I work with corporate entities, using chess as an analogy to teach business strategy. And I also work with children, in schools, in private schools. Because chess, like I said earlier, beyond just being a game, is an amazing educational resource. A game that gets a child to sit down for 2 hours to think has to be more than a game. It teaches a lot of important life skills, and when you have access to the mind of a child, you can go on to imprint values that will stay with them. It also helps them imbibe the spirit of competition, knowing how to lose graciously, knowing how to win graciously. A couple of misconceptions, people have about the game of chess. The first one, is people think chess is a boring game. They consider it, something that is highly cerebral and takes a lot of time. Some would say watching people play chess is like watching paint dry on the wall, but that is not true, Chess is a beautiful game. I personally think chess is the coolest game in the world. It's a game, that, requires some depth of learning to be able to really master its intricacies. Yeah, but when you can, learn through that phase of just mastering the rules of the game, it introduces you to a beautiful world, of chess. The novelty of that, helps you fall in love with the game, gradually. So that is the first thing. Chess is not a boring game. I think a second misconception is people think chess is only for smart people, and while that isn't necessarily true, the process of learning chess requires you to do some high-level thinking. Everyone has the capacity for thought, yeah. So chess is just one way to express that. So it is not just for smart people. Anyone can play chess. So another misconception about it is people think it's only meant for the elite, for the rich people. And that is not true. It's not an expensive sport. All you need is a chessboard. And the beauty of it is that it connects people. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or old, or poor or old or young. There are no gender stereotypes. There are no disparities. There's no classism. Another thing, people think it's just a game. Now, chess is not just a game. It's not just a board game. It's mental sport. Chess could be many things for several people, and it could actually be a profession. For most top players in the world, grandmasters, they get to travel the world and compete, at the highest level. There's also a career path in just being a chess coach. Chess has a lot of benefits, to children, to adults, in the corporate sector. One of the co-founders of PayPal, Peter Thiel, he teaches a course in Harvard using chess analogies, to teach business strategy. And there are a lot of parallels that could be drawn from chess to war to life and all of that. So, chess could be different things. It is just beyond just being a game. It's a game that inspires, creativity, critical thinking. It connects people. I've met a lot of amazing people just because I play chess. So there's a lot of content around it. And right now, we're experiencing the chess renaissance, because of the Queen's Gambit series, has made chess a lot more popular. The biggest online platform in the world has that before the Queen's Gambit series came out, they had maybe 10 million users. Now they have about 50 million users.
It's been a long time coming. A dream being built on love and compassion. A dream to unveil reality in every child. To bridge the gap between two different worlds. Welcome to Makoko, the largest floating community in the world.
The Chess in Slums project is a deeply personal one for me, because I grew up in a slum community, in a place in Ikorodu called Isalaodo. So growing up was pretty difficult, and the only script that was made available to me in the community where I grew up was getting involved in drugs, crime, just being on the streets, surviving on the streets, which a lot of my friends, that we grew up together did. But the one thing that literally saved me from where I grew up was chess. I got introduced to chess at a really young age, and that was what made all the difference, because it expanded my imagination of what was possible. So sometime in 2018, I came back to where I grew up. Then, things were really difficult for me, and I didn't have a lot of financial stability. So I moved back to Ikorodu, to where I grew up, during school hours, I would always see, children just roaming the streets, hawking food, and all of that. And, my heart sunk deeply, because nothing had changed from when I was a child, to coming back, almost 10 years later, to still seeing things remain the same way, and I thought about what I could do to help some of these children that weren't in school to at least engage their mind so they don't fall into the wrong things, and the only thing I could do then was chess, yeah. So I just picked up a couple of chess boards and I told my friends, and we just went to a community in Ikorodu, a slum community not too far from where I grew up, called Majidun. And we just set up the chess boards. We called about 5 kids, and they came around. They couldn't speak English, so communicating was a bit difficult. But then, a few minutes into teaching them, I was astounded by how they were able to understand the concept we were trying to teach them by recognizing patterns. And I left there that day with a resolve that these children that people do not necessarily care about because of their background, they also have the capacity to do more. They have the potential to be great. They just need someone to believe enough in them and create a positive avenue for them to express themselves. I knew that chess could be a medium to that. So I kept coming back every weekend. Every Saturday after church rehearsals, I'd always go down to the community with my friends. Then the 5 grew into 10 and 20, then 50, then 100. So we had a buzzing community of children, that wanted to be a part of the academy. And we didn't have the resources for that. So that was when I knew that there was a need to scale this even further, and make it into, an entity. So that was when, we gave it a name, Chess in Slums, initiative. Then what really made everything grow, what really made the project start evolving was when one of the girls from our academy, her name was Basira, a little girl, she was always very punctual to the class. She would always want me to give her a piece to hold on to. And one of those days, I just gave her the coin and she held it with so much hope. And we took a picture of her. Now that picture had, a lot of significance to me, so I wanted to know more about the girl. So I went to her house and I realized that they were really poor. and she had never been to school before, but she would always say things like she wanted to be a nurse. That was the only English word she knew, nurse. So people in the community would always call her Mama Nurse, and she was, she had this very great spirit. She was always very cheerful, full of smiles. So I decided to write about this girl, that I'd found, who, despite, never having been in the four walls of the classroom, despite being in a place like this, she's still there to dream, to become more. And her dreams are valid. And I feared that she would never, get an opportunity to attain, those dreams. And I just wrote it and I just posted it, and the story went viral, on Facebook then, and somebody reached out and said, I'd like to sponsor Basirat's education, till she's done with school. And that was an amazing news, and I went to share the good news with the parents, and we were enrolled in one of the best Montessori schools, just outside the community. And that was it. That was when, it occurred to me that this could become a vision to find more children like Basirat. Yeah, because Nigeria is in an educational crisis, and more than 60 million children that can't afford to be in school. And that is not the only tragedy. The greater tragedy is the fact that there are several other millions that are in school, but they aren't learning, anything that will be relevant, to the global market, to the world, and no one really seems to care enough to pay attention to children like that. So that was when it occurred to me that we could do something to change the world, to use chess as a medium to raise a new generation of intellectuals, children that would question everything, children that would, use their minds, understand that their mind are very powerful, and with that they could change the world. They could do great things, and also use it as a medium to get them back to school and put them on scholarship support. So that was when the vision for Chess in Slums Africa was birthed, and we registered as an organization, and we went on to train about 200 children. About 20 of them are on scholarships now, and we've had a lot of them win tournaments. They've had a lot of amazing exposure. So that was how it all started. And so yeah, the focus of the Chess in Slums project is in slum communities, the very impoverished communities. So, we don't have the resources to do it for all children, even in the slum community. Yeah. So what we do is we have a profiling phase. So we profile the kids, we get their names, their ages, their families and all of that. Then we do a vulnerability assessment to know the ones that were most vulnerable, if a community with children, with more than 1,000 children, we can't teach all of them. So we could maybe have just 100. So we have to work with the ones that are most vulnerable, that could really, really use, an outlet like this, to express themselves and build valuable skills, for their future. The game of chess is simple to learn. It takes a lifetime to master. It's very complex. And starting out, I wasn't sure how this was going to pan out because, the intricacies of the game required some high-level explanation, terminologies, and for children that have never had any sort of formal education, I thought it might be a bit impossible to have them, play at the highest level, but I was wrong. They showed, a great intellectual prowess. When we started, a lot of them couldn't even pronounce chess. They would always call it chest. But now, when we're doing group analysis, you see them, using words like prophylaxis. Like every child has the capacity to do so much. Just like, we privilege, in our own privilege, can, read books, we are literate, we could be informed enough to do certain things. The only difference is they don't have enough information. They don't have quality education, but their minds are very well capable of doing the most complex things in the world. And so I wasn't surprised when I saw that, after just a few weeks into learning, I didn't learn that fast. They were doing amazingly well. They grabbed a lot of the concepts very easily, and a lot of them have won tournaments and are playing at master level right now. The goal ultimately is not to make all of them become chess professionals. Some are obviously more talented. Some, will definitely not go on to become chess professionals, but then to become a medium to other opportunities for them, to scholarship, to learning valuable skills from the game that would help them in future, and building a community of learners. Yeah, one of the biggest challenges we've had, over time is funding, and resources, because putting together a lot of these things, the administration, the logistics, is very capital intensive, and even accessibility to a lot of these communities. These are not like in regular urban areas, they're in slum communities. We have to get boats, and all of that. So funding has been the major challenge that we've had, because if we had more resources, more funding, we'll be able to expand our programs, impact a lot more lives, and get, world-class, facilities, to aid our training sessions with the kids, get more tech items, to be able to get the kids to use technology, engage the use of technology to play chess, and also connect to the global community of chess players around the world. So yeah, funding, and funding is just a major part. I'm the kind of person that wouldn't always want to think money is a problem, because money is always going to be a problem, and a lot of starting out was making personal sacrifices, but thankfully we had a lot of volunteers, who really poured our hearts into this. It's been a beautiful journey, and we've had a lot of inspiring stories. We've trained more than 200 children, across 2 slum communities in Lagos, and we've had a lot of incredible success stories of the children. But there's the very recent one was the story of a boy that we found in the slums of Makoko. His name is Ferdinand, a boy that has cerebral palsy. So I remember when we wanted to start profiling the children, it didn't come on the first day. So the second day it came, it wasn't selected. So it was just hanging around our training center, trying to peek from the window. And because of his condition, the other children in the communities were bullying him and mocking him. And I just saw him, and he was crying. And I called him into the training center, and I just put him in a class. And a few minutes into joining, the coach called me and said, well, what is his name? That he had performed every other person, even the ones that had been in the class earlier, in the class. So apparently he had been watching just from the windows, and he had already picked up the rules of the game. He had a speech impairment. He couldn't talk. He couldn't. And in the Makoko community, the kids don't speak English. They don't even speak the native Yoruba language. They speak a different dialect, Egun. So we couldn't even communicate properly with them. It was some of the few kids that understood, the local Yoruba that would always translate to the other kids. The beauty of chess is that, you can show it's a very practical game. And he started displaying sparks of genius like I'd never seen before. So that was when we discovered that he was actually a gifted child, despite having cerebral palsy. He had a mild form of cerebral palsy, which is, brain damage and muscle spasms, And so we kept training them. We trained them every day, 5 hours for 2 weeks. I was always very, present, very punctual. And so we had a tournament in the community to test their knowledge of what we had taught them, and to also celebrate their excellence. At the time, they had already mastered the basics of the game and could play and compete. So we taught them, and we had the tournament. And the boy won his junior category of the tournament. He performed exceptionally well. And we had trophies, we had medals, and we celebrated him on that day. His mother came, she was in tears. And his story really went around the community and inspired a lot of children. We put out a story on social media, and it went viral. Inspired people from around the world, whose children suffered from one disability or the other. And for Ferdinand, for the gifted boy, realized that, beyond just being disabled, he had the art of a champion, and chess was a way for him, to find expression. He had found his gift of chess. Imagine if we had never given him a chance, would never have discovered that he had such gift, such great talent. And that talent, helped him meet the governor. So when the governor saw his story on social media, he was invited to the State House. He got to play against the governor. The governor is a good player that has been playing for years, and the boy had only been learning for barely a month. But the game ended in a stalemate, in a draw. And the governor, helped the family, he and all his other siblings will be on scholarship support. They also give them a substantial amount of money, and they will be relocating them from the slums, to the city. So his gift changes fortunes forever. And that's the beauty of chess. Like I said earlier, it's a prestigious game. It's a game that brought him before kings, and that changed his life forever. And this happened very recently. And that is the power of the game. Beyond just chess, like I said, we're creating, in a way, for them, a positive avenue for them, to find expression, to live out their truest potential. The only other script made available to them is to probably get into other things, indulge in drugs and crime. But chess, for Ferdinand, is a gift. He's a boy that has discovered what he loves and is great at it. So every child has that gift too. And if given the same opportunity, there's no telling what they could do with it. So that was a very inspiring story that I would always keep, in my heart to remind myself always of who I am and what I can become. So I'm rooting for Ferdinand. His journey has just begun, and he's going to do even greater things. So we have a monthly tournament, for the children in our more established training center in Majudu in Kurudu, where they get to win cash prizes. So it's just a way to, build a community, encourage the spirit of competition, and more importantly, make the kids understand that there's always a reward for hard work. If they work hard at improving their skills, they get to win cash prizes of about 50,000 naira, to support their families. To let them know they can also earn from playing chess. So we have the monthly tournament, to help support the kids that have really shown dedication, and excellence, so far. So we have that, and we'll keep doing that, subsequently, having more tournaments subsequently. The long-term vision for Chess in Slums Africa, now we've gotten a lot of visibility, we've gotten a lot of traction, and we want to leverage on some of these opportunities, to expand. There are many Muslim communities. We've been able to train about just 200 children. There are millions of children out there, that our program could really, benefit their lives, and help set their lives on a different trajectory. So the vision is to expand to other slum communities across, beyond even Nigeria, across Africa, and have a chess academy in every community we go to. So the Chess Academy will serve as a learning hub for the children, a safe space for them to come together, build a community of learners, of chess players, and help instill the love of learning. That medium would enable us, engage their minds, get them off the streets, and get them back to school on scholarship support too. So that is the vision, to use chess as a medium to transform education in Africa, to raise a new generation of intellectuals from some of these forgotten places, communities, and to truly show the world that it is possible to do great things from a small place. We're currently running a campaign because the project we did in the slums of Makoko was just a pilot phase. Now we want to go back to the community and set up a permanent training center, where we can find more children like Ferdinand, impact more lives, get more children off the streets and back to school. So we're running a Chess for Education campaign. The goal of the campaign is to get 100 children that we profiled in the community who don't go to school, who have never had any formal education, put them in school on scholarship support, build a training center, and also build a boat. Accessing the community is very difficult. So I want to build a boat. I'll be able to convey the children from their homes to school, more like a boat school bus, from their home to school and back, and also the volunteers to be able to access the community easily. So we are running an active campaign. You can check out our Instagram page. We have the flyers there. We have information on how you can support. And at Chess in Slums Africa, we live by the Ubuntu philosophy, that I am because we are, and that we can't truly be at our best, if all links within a chain aren't at their best too. So we are better because of, the support of people that have really come together to help us grow, that have given selflessly, volunteered their time, their resources, to help us really tell, inspiring tales of impact, and truly, understand the struggles of the children that we're trying to help, and not just demean them, and tell that stories of poverty, but to instead shine spotlights on the potential that they wield, and I mean, in the next 30 years, Nigeria will be the country with the fourth highest population in the world, most populous nation in the world. And there's a lot of human capital that is being left to waste, and it is going to be those children that we are leaving behind that we are not necessarily doing anything about, that will become a liability to that future. Will grow up to become adults who don't have the skills or competence, to survive, in a world that is highly digitized, in a world that requires, certain skills, to earn a living or to survive. So what happens to their future? We need to ask ourselves these critical questions, and create, avenues for them, to also be stand-up role models of society. You can support what we do. You can support our cause in our Chess in Slums Africa by donating. A lot of what we do costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to put the children on scholarship and to run our programs effectively. So you can donate to our cause. If you're not in Nigeria, we have a GoFundMe page set up. You can follow us on social media, on Twitter at Chess in Slums Africa, on Instagram at Chess in Slums Africa, and on Facebook at Chess in Slums Africa. You can also check out our website, www.chessinslumsafrica.com. We're not just a team of chess players, we're a team of educators, people that work in the graphics department, the social media department, people that are on ground, in welfare. So we have an active team of volunteers. You can join us. We're just a team of young people trying to make a difference, trying to change the world from our little space. So if you have any skills in any of those capacity, join us and let us really, truly make impact.
To mentor, teach, love, and give. To create a new story for the Nigerian child through chess. Join us as we unveil the Makoko chess dream, where the impossible says, I am possible.